As Tom mentioned earlier, we're looking today at we're looking this month at how the value of accountability is an expression of spiritual life. And today we're looking at the spiritual basis that allows for our choices regarding accountability, responsibility, right and wrong, that spiritual basis that allows our choices to move from being externally dictated, like by our parents when we were little kids, to move from there to our being guided by an internal knowledge, an internal knowing of what is right. By the way, I know it's Father's Day, and that can bring up some things for some of us. Maybe your dad passed and you miss him, or maybe you didn't have a dad. Maybe you had a father who was not so great. It is my great pleasure to give you the good news. Each of us, according to Jesus, has a loving Father within. Ernest Holmes, who authored the spiritual philosophy we study, drew from many different world religions and philosophies, and two of his favorite quotes from Jesus are, "It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And I and the Father are one. I and the Father are one. In fact, Jesus used the word Abba for Father, and in the Aramaic that he spoke, that's actually a form of Father that is very affectionate. The word is closer to saying Dad or Daddy. I and my Daddy are one. So what a shift from an earlier description of God as some distant, unpredictable, angry tyrant that you'd better just wish you could please. In fact, that description also fits my own father. And somehow, as a little Lutheran girl, I had the two of them mixed up in my mind. They were both male, they were both unpredictable, they were all sometimes angry, and you better, just hope you could please them. Thank goodness we've all arrived at a place and a spiritual philosophy like this that has a very different understanding of God. So different that many of us choose a different word than God to reflect this new understanding. A term like spirit or ultimate reality or beloved or creative intelligence. Whatever term you like to use, our understanding here of this divine one is that it is everywhere present, and similar to the way that Taoism describes everything, everywhere present, and yet it could not be closer. It's within. It is closer than our breath, as the Quran says. And as Jesus said, it's loving, and we are it. We are one with this thing that is everywhere, within, and loving. Now, I know you've heard this from this stage many times. In fact, it's just about the only thing you hear from this stage, whoever's speaking, whoever is singing. But I know I need to hear it. I need to be reminded always, over and over, of these truths. I have to remind myself of these truths. Otherwise, I can slip into some long-held, basic, under-the-radar worldview that there is something out there that's controlling me, that there's something out there judging me, something out there waiting for me to slip, something out there that actually doesn't want me to have a good time. In short, I can slip into a victim mentality. So, if it's true, as we say here, that We believe that God is everywhere, within, and loving. Where did I get this idea that God is some distant, judging, victimizing, controlling presence? Well, one prime suspect for me was what I was taught in Sunday school about the Ten Commandments. Now, in the Hebrew Bible, or what traditional Christians sometimes call the Old Testament, the Israelites escaped from Egypt, and they're wandering around, heading toward the Promised Land. And at one point, God invites Moses to climb Mount Sinai so they can have a chat. And so they do, and Moses comes down from the mountain with these 10 sentences. Now, of course, being Lutheran, I didn't study this in Hebrew, so what I'm about to say may not be true, but I will tell you my experience. The ones that I memorized as a young person started like this: "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." And then there was, "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain," which meant you couldn't swear. Now, first of all, that was impossible to do, and I used to worry about going to hell because of it. I mean, ridiculous, but anyhow, I did. So not only do they sound impossible to do, but the language comes from the King James Version of the Bible in this case, and in a case for a lot of us. And that language sounds so ominous. Thou shalt. In my mind, it was as if God spoke some sort of weird, scary English. Thou shalt not. In fact, I thought thou was some sort of Godspeak for you all. In fact, in 17th century English, the word thou is the affectionate form of the word you. In the same way that Spanish and French have tu as the friendly form that you use with family and friends, so earlier English had thou. It's the affectionate form. So far from being some sort of mysterious distancing language, thou actually reflects a language of closeness. And then there's shalt. Thou shalt. Thou shalt not. What does that mean? Well, I always thought it meant you should not, or you must not, or you better not, or else. But recently, I've been considering, wait a minute, shalt is just English shall. You shall. Which, of course, is just you will. Thou shalt not just means you won't. So it's describing the future tense. So maybe these are not divine orders, maybe they're divine promises. What if they're describing a state of being when we realize that we are absolutely one with God, part of all that is? So consider that what is being said here is, beloved, when you awaken spiritually, you won't have any gods except me. Well, that makes a sense, I think, from our experience. Isn't it true that the more you become committed to your spiritual path, your attention, where you're putting your attention, has shifted? Perhaps some of the things you used to do are no longer entertaining. Some of the people you used to hang out with aren't present in your life anymore for whatever reason. Some of the ways you spend your money have changed. Maybe you even find yourself gravitating more toward unplugging from all the noise and activity and turning within, just being quiet. Maybe you are paying more attention than you used to that divine whatever it is within. Maybe more and more fulfillment is coming from that rather than from external things. Second one, when you're enlightened, you won't take a false oath in the name of the Lord your God. And that has a very special meaning in our metaphysical tradition, since each one of us is one with the Divine One. Anytime we say anything, it's the Divine One speaking. Our words have divine power. So anytime we say something that isn't true, like, I'm not so smart, or he's not a good person, we might as well just add and so it is, amen. Because we have just taken a false oath. We are using our divine power of attention and articulation to affirm, solidify, and make real something that is not true. It's a false oath. But in an awakened state, you won't take a false oath in the name of the Lord your God. It reminds me of what the Buddha said about the eightfold path. The eightfold path of a spiritual life, and one of the things is right speech. Paying attention to our words so that they are in line with our Buddha nature, our divine nature. Now, in terms of these 10 sentences, here comes something interesting. The next two are not about what will happen. The next two are suggestions for life now. Kind of like, meanwhile, here are 2 tips for a good life. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Well, that's a good idea, not to be in work mode 7 days a week. I mean, how can we ever attain any calm sort of understanding of the kingdom within if we don't take some time out to be still? Maybe an entire day seems kind of unrealistic, but we could start with 2 hours, a half a day of dedicated, quiet time to recharge mind and spirit. Remember the Sabbath. Here's another suggestion. Honor your father and mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God gives you. Well, at first glance, this kind of looks like a conditional bribe. If you honor your father and mother, then I will grant you a long life on this land, which, by the way, I gave you. But if we consider who is our mother, who is our father, where did we come from? If we consider all those things that contributed to creating us, all those things that continue to contribute to sustaining us, there's a Buddhist meal chant that says, innumerable labors brought us this food. Innumerable labors brought us this food. And so it is in this case. I think we're talking about those innumerable circumstances and beings and plants and water and all manner of things that have contributed to creating us and to sustaining us. So by honoring them and caring for them, they continue to be available to sustain us. It's not an if-then proposition, it's a statement of fact. When you honor all life, it can continue to sustain you. Well, here are the final set of promises, again, with the frame, dear one, in an enlightened state of oneness with me. You won't kill. You won't commit adultery. You won't steal. You won't lie about others. You won't desire other people's good. Well, why would you? If you're fully aware, if we're fully aware that we're one with everything, with all people, with all beings, we know that there's no reason to harm somebody else. We're only harming ourselves. We know that there's no reason to be envious or take from another person, since just because they have something that's good for them, that doesn't deny my good, that doesn't detract from my good. I can still have something that's good for me. So in looking at the Ten Commandments with this understanding that they aren't orders we have to keep or else we'll be punished, but rather they're a set of guideposts for how we're doing on our spiritual path. This is helpful to me. Am I still envious? Well, sometimes. But certainly not as much as when I walked in here and I had the feeling that everybody else was blessed and favored except me. Do I still look outside for my fulfillment? Yes, I do. And I do notice an ever-increasing desire to be with the presence within. Internal guideposts, not external commands. So maybe that divine presence on Moses' mountain wasn't so angry and unpredictable and demanding as I thought. Maybe it was more like the divine presence that Jesus described when he said, "It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." Just as I grew up and grew into a new understanding of God, so I grew up and got to have new experiences of earthly fathers. Over the years, I've had many loving father figures. Some of you are in this room. Over the years, I've come to have some understanding of why my dad was so angry and some compassion for his suffering. Over the years, I've been able to witness some great fathers in action. Of course, the one I've been able to witness and examine most closely and extensively is my husband, Kim Kaiser. And I saw him giving 3 gifts, at least. I want to speak about the 3 gifts he relayed to our daughter, who's now 35. And these are the gifts that I'm sure other fathers give their children. First, he was able to offer her expanded opportunities for freedom and possibilities for exploring the world. All the way from the time on the jungle gym when he would make suggestions to her and I would have to leave because I couldn't watch. Through to the teen years, where of the 2 parents, he was the one who spent more time in the car with her as she was learning to drive. New opportunities for freedom. Secondly, he empowered her to stand on her own in a practical way. I watched him kind of making sure that she had the skills and attitude she would need in life on her own, providing his constructive direction while also affirming her abilities. And thirdly, he helped her take responsibility for herself, whether it was on the hiking trail or helping her examine her own motivations for the choices she made. Those are the 3 gifts I saw Kim give our daughter: freedom, self-empowerment, self-responsibility. As I said at the beginning, whether you had a father who did that for you or not, Jesus assured us that there is a loving Father presence within, whose great joy it is to give us the kingdom. And as a kid, I asked, what the heck does that mean? Where is it? Where's my kingdom? Aren't I a little young to be a king? Well, this is my current understanding based on the way I've been thinking about what would it take to be a king or a queen in a kingdom. What if somebody offered you the possibility of being king or queen of a country? Well, it seems to me there would be three main things that would have to be increased in you. One, there would be increased freedom because as king or queen, you could do some stuff. Secondly, you would have more power because you're the one who decides what's happening. Finally, you'd have more responsibility because you have to take good care of this kingdom. And I do believe these are the three gifts of the divine presence within to each of us: freedom, power, responsibility. So let us affirm together, not only do we have these three divine gifts of freedom, power, and responsibility, but let us also affirm that we know how to use them wisely. I invite you to turn within as we bring our attention to who we truly are, one with the eternal, loving presence of God itself, creator of all that is. We are indeed one with this divine one, this infinite intelligence, this boundless love, this ocean of abundant good. And who and what it is who and what we are. We are part of it, sharing its nature, its qualities, its intelligence, its goodness. So in all that we do, say, and think, the Divine One itself is participating. Its power empowers us to have, to do, to be the good that we desire. Its intelligence guides us in making the highest choices for ourselves and others. Its grace relieves us of any false ideas we may have been holding about who we truly are, and its grace replaces them with the confident, absolute knowing that we are each the beloved of God, the chosen one of Spirit, living its eternal life. I give thanks for all the many ways that the presence of the Divine One makes itself known and felt in our lives in the days to come. I celebrate the way that the divine qualities of peace, of joy, of love, of intelligence guide, sustain, maintain, and uplift us. So it is with a sense of thanksgiving that I release this prayer to that which makes it so. And so it is. I invite you just to linger a moment in that sense of well-being, a sense of the remembering of the goodness of all that is, of life itself.